When we arrived just before sunrise, all was quiet, not even a breeze blowing, and fog blanketed the hillside where we sat waiting. It didn't take long for a morning glow to appear, and the hills started to fill with life. A dark silhouette appears, with an orange glow behind. Standing there was the king, with antlers towering a few feet over his magnificent head. He was looking over his herd of females and young bucks waiting to test their status. It is rutting season for the Tule elk at Point Reyes National Seashore, and the bull elk bugles over his territory. I am Marcia Civic, and this is a Nature Short, a production of Bee Provided Conservation Radio. Tule elk living in the Point Reyes National Seashore, just 45 miles north of San Francisco, now number approximately 750. They are an umbrella species with the ecological role of helping to reestablish native grasses, trees, and landscape connectivity. This is the largest known herd to exist in the world. They share the land with many other species such as bobcat, mountain lions, beavers, many species of birds, native plants, and now...
Okay, there's 6,000 cows in the park. That's not small. The largest farm in the park is almost as big as a concentrated animal feedlot operation, or CAFO.
This is Diana Oppenheim, founder of 4elk.org, a public campaign to save the Point Reyes Tule elk. The largest elk herd is fenced in an approximate 2,000-acre piece of parkland at Tamales Point. Dairy ranchers have fenced them in as a captive herd, which in turn has cut off some of the vital water sources to the elk, which is desperately needed during this drought. Elk are dying of thirst, and now the Park Service is considering updating their land management plan to allow these ranchers to expand operations. So wait a minute. What is the mission of a national park then?
It's maximum protection of natural resources, to leave natural resources unimpaired for future generations. So that's the mission of a national park.
So what is actually happening?
There's two separate issues happening at Point Reyes, both very much related to the dairy and cattle ranch industry. And one of the main, so the 4Elk campaign, what we started to look at was the Park Service is updating their general land management plan. And so basically they are coming up with new ways to manage their land, which is a public process. So they went through they laid out 6 different alternatives, like how should we manage our land? Should we keep it as is? Should we get rid of the ranchers? Should we get rid of some of the ranchers? Should we expand the ranchers? So they laid out 6 different alternatives, and were required to do an environmental impact statement on the ranching industry to help them pick which alternative to move forward with, to stay in alignment with the mission of a national park. And now the final plan has been released, and they've completely ignored the public. Right? So there were over 7,000 comments that were submitted, and over 90% of people who replied or submitted comments oppose ranching in the National Seashore. Yeah, so the current plan in which the park is moving forwards with, and it's not a done deal yet, we're in this last window of time to make change. So the final plan came out, and basically they're saying that they will expand the ranching industry in the Seashore. They're going to allow the ranchers to diversify their operations, meaning they can bring in other livestock, they can bring in row crops, they can have bed and breakfasts, things to make them more economically viable and sustainable. They're gonna allow on-site processing, which is completely unprecedented in a national park, which means that all these beef and dairy ranchers are gonna be allowed. I mean, potentially this could mean on-site slaughterhouses, mobile slaughterhouses, and they're planning to extend or hand over 20-year leases to the ranching families. And the other thing of note is that they're gonna change change the rule that says it has to be family run, right? Because a lot of the ranchers right now, the only way they can continue ranching is if their children take over the ranching industry, so it stays in the family.
So, how is it that ranchers were allowed to stay once it was designated a parkland?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a really good question and such a hot debate. People are going to land different on this, what they think and what they believe. So, ranchers were here like during the gold rush, there was a lot of land grants given and the ranching industry started. And so the ranchers have been here since the 1850s. So they're sort of multi-generational family ranches. That's sort of what they were here first. In the 1960s, the federal government was looking for, they wanted to have to start a national park. They wanted to have a national seashore and protect a coastline. And so after a lot of work on that, they chose Point Reyes National Seashore. And you can go into all the historical records of how contentious that was, of starting a national park. The ranchers fought the park tooth and nail, but ultimately they conceded and they sold their land to the government to become a national park. So they were actually paid about $350 million in today's dollars for their land. And in exchange, they were given 25-year leases to say, okay, we're going to give you this money, and you can spend the next 25 years continuing to ranch the land or until you die, whatever sort of comes first. And then after that, we'll phase you out of the park, and the mission will be to restore the wilderness and have like more wildlife. So that was the original intention. And then because of ranching community and ranching politics and the power that the ranching industry has, and it's just like a culturally significant history. Like these are people who've been in the community a long time, and a lot of people who work in the National Park Service grew up with these people. Their kids go to the same school. It's just like it's a community. And there was an amendment in the 1970s to allow ranching to extend through special use permits. And so every year, 2 years or 5 years, each ranch gets a special use permit to continue their operations. And they've been continuing operating in the national park ever since.
Are these ranchers maintaining this land to any type of, or any kind of national park standards?
What we're seeing and what we know to be true is that they're not really doing that. So they're doing a pretty inadequate job. It's some of the most degraded land in California. Like the waterways, because of the ranching and how the ranching is done in the national park, has led to the waterways in Point Reyes being some of the worst in the state of California due to E. coli contamination and the like. So on paper, yes, and you'll hear a lot of people saying, oh, well, they do it at high standards, and oh, they're coexisting with wildlife, and they're these small ranches. They're not small. They're not these old quaint, like they have modern equipment, modern facilities. They're not sustainable. They are trucking in all the equipment. They're trucking in hay and supplemental feed from the Central Valley, from all over the place, which contains invasive species.
As Diana mentioned, we do have some time. It is now October 31st, and we have just over 1 month to convince the Park Service to not go ahead with their current plan or option of expanding ranching operations on park land. Remember, this is land that you and I also co-own, and it is you and I that are helping to pay the property taxes of these ranches, and they are doing more harm than good to our national seashore. I don't know, but I cannot imagine ever visiting Point Reyes National Seashore and hiking without the presence of the Tule elk. It is such an awesome experience to walk along the trails of Tomales Point and to see the magnificent males with antlers towering over their heads, and to see the calves practice rutting in the spring. There is still plenty we can do, and here are some options or things that we can do to take action now.
letters to the editor, and just really talking about it with your friends. We have some really amazing, like we have an 8-minute video that is done. It was done by a National Geographic film crew. It's a gorgeously done video. So I think sometimes when just like sharing that around so people can just in a quick, if they have 10 minutes, they can watch this video and just spread the word that way. The more people who know about it, the better right now.
That's
Share
great.
it on social media, tag, if you're sharing it on social media, maybe tag Jared Huffman, tag the Park Service, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Diana, for all you're doing for the elk. And listeners, please contact Diana through her website, forelk.org. She updates the website with current news about what is happening, and she has some great and enlightening videos on her site to view and to share. So to view and to listen to the full interview of our Facebook Live event, which this was taken from, please visit Be Provided Conservation Radio's Facebook page, or you can also visit our YouTube channel. You can find more of our stories at www.beprovided.com. And I am Marcia Civic, and this is a nature short produced by Be Provided Conservation Radio, giving you short stories and highlights from our conversations with people helping to protect our natural world. So stay safe and stay healthy.